Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. However, we are getting off the Bruce train, though I'm sure he will come up, because here in Texas, it's hot in the city. It is in the 80s today in Dallas, and my new friend Leanne is joining me to talk about her favorite musician. Leanne, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is
Yeah.
fun.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm originally from the Midwest, from Waukegan, Illinois. That's also the same place where Ray Bradbury is from and Jeff Benny, a famous comedian.
Nice.
Yeah. From there, though, I lived in Las Vegas. That's where I finished college and stayed there for 16 years. And that's where I started doing comedy while I held a regular day job. And then after working for a big corporation for almost 13 years. I was in
Mhm.
Vegas 15, but after 13 years working there, I was laid off and I decided, oh, I'm going to go pursue comedy full time. So I moved to New York and spent time in New York, went to LA, yada, yada, yada. Now I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I am a comedian turned entrepreneur and I have my own online comedy platform for live comedy.
We're going to get to all of that because that just it sounds like a delicious hodgepodge of topics to that all of them sound exciting. But I always like to start at the beginning. So you talked about growing up in the Midwest. Was your family into into music? And if so, what kind of music was your family listening to?
Oh, okay. So my family is very into music in the sense like we never had the TV on. Like a lot of people now have the TV on
Oh,
all of the
sure.
time. We had the stereo on.
Hmm.
And so there's always music in our house from morning
Okay.
till bedtime. So now my parents, they listen to a lot of Glenn Miller and a much older generation music, a lot of more of easy listening kind of stuff also. And my brothers are several years older than me,
Okay.
and they listen to a lot of rock, classic rock, especially in the 70s.
Yeah.
And me, I listen to everything they listen to. I listen to whatever my parents listened to. And then I was considerably younger. So I ended up listening to I remember hanging out with my friends as I got into junior high, and that's where I started learning about what everybody else was listening to. And MTV came on air.
Sure.
And so everything that was on MTV, everything that you'd go to the roller rink and listen to in the early 80s, late 70s. And I ended up getting really into Billy Idol. A lot of my friends were into Duran, but I thought Billy Idol was just super cool. Yeah.
So when I have a Springsteen fan on, or really any fan, I usually ask the question, can you remember when you first discovered Billy Idol? And if you can articulate it, what about his music or his persona spoke to you?
Yeah. I was trying to think like when did I first hear him? And honestly, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna guess that it was through this other girl, a friend of a friend, like we all uh
Sure.
and she had really liked Billy Idol, but also when I turned 13, my first concert was Huey Lewis and the News because
Okay.
that happened to be performing
Yeah.
at I think the Wisconsin State Fair or something, and or Summerfest, and it was a general admission. If people remember general admission concerts,
Sure.
dangerous for a 13-year-old. But because I had gone to that, my parents had allowed me to do that, I was then allowed to go and check out another concert, and I chose Billy Idol. And so my real full on experience with Billy Idol was when I saw him at Summerfest that next year and experienced that at the age of 13 with friends. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And knowing that I was going to go to it, I listened to all of his albums even more and all of that. But I can't remember the exact instance, but I believe I was influenced through friends without a doubt.
Okay. And there's one of the themes I see a lot in this podcast is siblings. It's a topic that comes up fairly often where if you're the older, you influence the younger siblings, or if you're a younger sibling, you're influenced by the older siblings. But it is certainly not unusual to hear that friends are doing this. So you've talked about that, but why Billy? Did you just love his persona? Was the music, the energy? Why do you think that spoke to you? And I take it because it was funny when we talked about having you join me, you immediately said, "Oh, I want to talk about Billy Idol." There wasn't even "Oh, I've got to think about this." You just immediately knew that was who you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Because I know, like today, I don't really have a favorite as I grew older, but there's always been some sort of connection there. And I think although my brothers weren't listening to Billy Idol, they weren't into the punk rock scene. They were into the heavy metal and the classic rock scene. I think one of the things that I was very influenced by them. I wanted them to like me. I wanted my
Sure,
brother to think I was cool. They didn't want to
sure.
babysit a little kid, like a little annoying kid. They wanted someone cool. So I also think that I was attracted to Billy Idol and what his music was about because it was more similar to their lane. And also he had that rebel, obviously rebel yell, but obvious like the more of that vibe, that rebel rock and roll,
Sure.
all that kind of thing. And I just thought that was really cool. And so that, and I just, yeah, I was attracted to that because then from there, my brothers at Christmas would buy me albums and they knew Billy Idol or Generation X, his previous band, and
Yeah.
they were in my alley.
I want to go back just a little bit growing up. I'll ask this question when I have a writer on the podcast. Were you in a family of readers? And were you always a strong reader? Were you always drawn? Kevin Pollak says that many comedians have look at me disease, even though they're incredibly shy. So,
Mhm.
did you have that? Did you always have the need to, if not being the center of the attention, to be quote unquote funny, to be humorous?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
So my whole family is actually really funny. They're
Okay.
all very witted, very good comedic timing, which I don't
Okay.
think is always able to be learned, if at all. And so my parents had me telling jokes at a very young age. But I also recognize like laughing and humor was a coping mechanism. My family wasn't criers. Me,
Okay.
I was a crier. They were like, "Why is she always crying?" But laughing, and if people were angry or if there was like anything weird, like a funeral, something that we'd normally be sad at, their coping mechanism was like jokes, whether they were in poor taste or not is another story. That's what we would lean toward. So that heavily influenced me. And reading, my dad and I were always at the library. I loved going to the library with my dad. He was an avid reader and I wanted to do that too. So I always had my nose in a book and it was, "Hey dad, look, I read a book a day, just like you," kind of thing.
What kind of books did you love to read?
Fiction. I loved anything fiction. You name it, I would gravitate toward it. I would say probably not science fiction as much,
Okay.
although but probably not there. Yeah, I would read all kinds of, especially as a teenager, coming of age stories and
Yeah.
things like whatever my friends recommended. I love murder mysteries still to this day. Yeah. But
Okay.
now I've expanded and as an entrepreneur, I read a lot of other books and
Have you Lutz Spellman Files? Have you read those series of books?
no.
All right. I will. Yeah. In fact, I'll send you a link. So Lisa Lutz she's a writer and she wrote this series of books about a family of private detectives. And the main character is Isabel. And like her mom would do background checks on anyone that she was dating. And so it's a very dysfunctional family. And what Lisa talks about is her mysteries are like why what the younger daughter in the family, one of her teachers blows his nose and puts the napkin in his desk drawer. So why? Why isn't he just throwing it in the trash can? And that's one of the mysteries that she discovers. So they're cute little mysteries. So I just sent you a link to on Amazon. It's one of my favorite series, and Lisa's just this hilarious person. So if you like mysteries and character studies, you'll like it. So good. And there is a fair amount of comedy because like the absurdity of all this is the idea of this family of private detectives and all the weirdness they have on that is great. So good.
Thank you.
So, did you know you wanted to do comedy for a living, or did you just that was going to be something just on the side?
Neither,
None of
actually.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Tell me your origin story.
I went to school for business. I didn't even know I was going to go to college. I was a first generation college student on my dad's side. So I didn't even know what a credit hour was. I thought I would be a mom or,
Okay.
and then when people would ask just because I could, I would say, oh, I'm going to be the president of the United States. That's a whole different topic. But my mom talked me out of it. She's, no, everybody will know your every move, even when you're in the bathroom. I'm like, oh, never mind.
Okay.
But I went to school for business, and then the reason I signed up for a comedy writing class was because I was doing a lot of public speaking at work, and I wanted to do like a Johnny Carson monologue. And I was like, oh, I'm going to sign up for this comedy writing class at the university. It was a continuing ed class, and I did, and I really enjoyed it. I was terrible, but I loved it. And then a coworker was like, hey, did you know the Second City has a training center out here in Vegas now? And I was like, what? Being from the Chicagoland area, I was very
Yeah.
familiar. I signed up for a class and I was in. I was like, I love this. This is the best thing that ever happened. And no matter what I do in life, I always want to do improv or some sort of comedy. And I wasn't anticipating ever being a stand up. I thought stand ups, after doing improvisation for so many years, I was
Yeah.
like, people were like, oh, do you do stand up? No, I'm an improviser. And then I moved to New York and ran an open mic for 7.5 years. So everything changed. Yeah.
What I guess I'm just curious, this you're you went to this class and you discovered you liked it? Is that the idea that you just went, wow, this is I'm good at this or fun at this? Tell me a little bit about that.
So, yeah, I've always been really good at public speaking. And
Okay.
in school, when I would have to do presentations and stuff, I would always get A's. So it was something I was really good at.
Okay.
And my parents always were really supportive. Both my mom and dad are very good at public speaking.
Okay.
And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but man, she's good. She just has a natural ability to do it. And my dad was just funny,
Hmm.
same. So when I would have to do school assignments or anything, they would have me practice. And I would practice over and over again. They'd give me feedback and then I'd do it. So I really learned at a very young age of how to I think it's a skill to practice. A lot of people skip that step and just go up on stage and then they wonder why nothing went right.
Right.
But I would do that. And in doing so, having a family with a great sense of humor, I would always be encouraged to put humor into it and make it funny. And I did that through school, high school, college, everything. And people would always acknowledge that, my instructors, and that would always be part of their positive feedback for me. And then when I signed up for that comedy class, I was like, okay, I did it and I applied it and it went, but I wasn't like crushing it. Oh, I'm the
Yeah.
next, big thing. But I was like, wow, it's not as easy as I had assumed to write that way because that was new to me. And then when other coworkers were like, hey, I remember one of the presidents from another city had come in from our company and sat down with me and you're really good at speaking in front of people. And he was being very encouraging. And he goes, have you ever considered taking comedy classes like seriously? And he's the one who told me about the Second City in Vegas because his wife was an actor. And and I was like, no, I hadn't really given it much thought, to be honest. And after that other thing.
Yeah.
And And then it showed it then like I was in looking at a local newspaper and all of a sudden there was an ad. I'm like, okay, this is weird. Like he just told me about this. Now I'm seeing it
Sure.
again. Another sign. I'll call him. And I picked up the phone and I called. I signed up for a class. And it was just, it brought me so much joy. It brought me so much joy. And I skipped over a lot of part of my life where I had been married and divorced twice. And so this was coming now. I was at this, I took this first writing class at the age of 31 and started getting into comedy. So it was later in life for me, but it just seemed like the most natural thing to do. And I loved it.
One of the things I think about, Leanne, is, and I've been lucky enough to have a couple of comedians join me on the podcast to talk about their favorite musicians or to talk about their books. And I'm someone who is workplace funny. If I'm making a presentation, I usually can make people laugh. I get the story across. I'm really good. I remember once the president of our division said, "Wow, you were really good at that." Thanks. I've always been the gift of the gab. Like, we should have you do more of this talk. And so and I had someone come to me who had to do a presentation for his parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And he was looking for advice because you're always so good, Jesse. And I explained to him, I practice a lot. You should really practice. Make sure, don't be afraid, write what you want to say. You won't probably read it, but you want to have that and thing. And understand you're going to be nervous. I said, I'm always nervous before I get on stage, before I make a presentation. He goes, "You're kidding. You don't know it." And I go, "Oh, absolutely." I said, "That's just human nature." And the reason I tell that story is, but there's a difference between making a presentation to an audience that know you or even are there for a conference versus going to a comedy store or going to a website and where an audience that paid money, if it's live or doing that, and it's okay, mister, hey fat guy, make me laugh. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's elements of it that are very much the same. I think having a friendly audience is always a plus in some case. For public speaking, that can be very helpful. I find that when people I know show up to one of my shows, I get really nervous.
Yeah.
I would rather I don't know that they're there until afterward. And I I feel more vulnerable because I'm talking about my life and these jokes are there's a truth in comedy. Jokes come from a very personal space. And sometimes it's about them. Like, I don't want to know you're in the room. No, my husband's different. My husband knows my set and all my jokes inside and out. He could probably get up there and do my set for me because he's afterward, he's always a great person to debrief with because he knows my timing or if it's on or if it's off. But because he sees it so much. But I think, and I always get nervous to your point. I do get nervous. I think that's the respect I pay my audience. It matters to me. It matters very much to me on how I do. And the day I don't get nervous is the day I wonder, oh my goodness, what's wrong? And that usually doesn't go well. So I think getting nervous is really a plus. And I just really think that practicing, um, going to open mics, working out my jokes. I personally don't throw new things in there unless it's sandwiched in between other things or depending on like an audience, but I'm very careful of what's in the set and everything and going off of that planned thing.
I want to get to, as you talk about the platform and everything, I want to get back to Billy just for a moment. As you're getting all these albums and getting the music, you talked about seeing him live once. I always preface this, Leanne, that the amount of times you've seen your favorite artist is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are, because there are people that have never seen their favorite artist whatsoever. And then there's others, because of the nature of the business, they may have seen him hundreds of times. So, how many times have you seen Billy?
I think I thought it was twice. It was three times I've seen him.
Okay. And
Yeah.
And is his music still something you go to on a regular basis?
No, it's funny. I don't. I think about it a lot, but I don't. Here's where I think music has changed, that technology has changed for me and how I
Okay.
listen. Because before everything was on the radio, and there was a time where he was on the radio all the time. And then I had my cassette tapes that I took everywhere with me in the
Sure.
car. And then some CDs, and CDs, I don't know, that was a whole weird thing in itself. But then when like people came out with the iPod and I downloaded everything onto my iPod, but eventually the iPod went away and there went all my music disappeared. I'm like, what? I can't even remember all the albums I had on there. I don't have a record player anymore. I've
Mhm.
moved cross country so many times. So when I moved to New York, I moved with two suitcases. That's it. I just
Right.
picked it. So I lost a lot of that. So how I can started consuming it was different. And in New York, there weren't real radio stations, and I don't know. That was when the iPod. So I have to say, my listening to him went down, and then eventually it comes back around, and I'm like, I missed that, and I have to tap into that again, and then I'll seek it out on the internet. And I don't I think I think my last concert I saw was him, believe it or
Okay.
not. And that was when I was in California. And I actually don't go see any live music anymore. I think the tickets used to be so affordable. I used to go to concerts all the time, and tickets were what, 10, $20, somewhere in between there at most, for big giant names. And I just don't, and I did go see Bruce. Oh my God. He was like, no offense, Billy, but Bruce is a phenomenal, one of the best live concerts I've ever seen.
When did you
And
see him?
this was when I was living in Vegas. So it was probably between, I'm guesstimating between 2002 and 2006, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
It's got to be in the early 2000s.
Was
And
it
I,
in Vegas?
yeah, it was at the Thomas and Mack Center.
Okay.
And I've been listening to Bruce Springsteen my whole life. I remember the whole thing when Courtney Cox was on
Yeah.
stage, like all of those things happening, and all of the songs came out, and they're just like anthems for years. He was just iconic and like the guy. And then fast forward, now I'm living in Vegas, and my friend's like, "Hey, I've got Bruce Springsteen concert tickets." And I was like, "What?" Like, never dawned on me, like, "Yeah, but let's go." And we went, and I was just blown away because the experience was something I had is unmatched to anybody else I had seen in concert. And I've been to a lot of concerts. Yeah.
Yeah, I truly, and of course I do a podcast about him, so I'm biased, but I do believe he is one of the best live performers of all time. Similar to like James Brown or Freddie Queen and,
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury, that kind of thing. Were Did you know a lot of the songs when you heard him live?
I was actually surprised at how many songs I knew. Yeah, I knew so many. And it was like, why haven't I been to this concert before and many times? Not just one, like, why hadn't I done this before? But why wasn't I doing this every time he was touring? Because I think he's a live in person performer. Like, that's the thing. He is who he is. He's not there. You don't need all the production. You don't need all of the extra stuff. Like that band, the E Street Band. Wow. Like that just changes the whole vibe of the place, and everybody singing along. And I was like, this sounds better live than it would ever sound on my radio. Changes everything.
It is. I love you telling that story because I often joke about there's two kinds of people. The people that go to their first Bruce show and go, "Wow, that was long. That was pretty good." And then the others that go, "Oh my God, why haven't I been doing this? And when can I see it again?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he it really is that kind of has that energy and work. Do you feel is not only the expense of seeing live music, which it is very expensive depending on what venue and how high the range is. Do you feel that because of your work performing yourself that you is that affected your going out to see music because your energy is going toward doing performing yourself or doing other kinds of monitoring other people or enjoying other kinds of comedy?
Yeah, that's definitely it. I also think since the pandemic, we used to go out all the time, and
Yeah.
then that happened and it just changed everything. And also I'm older. I'm like in my 50s now. Like there's like a where do I want to be out past 9? No, I'm tired. So full disclosure, but I think when it comes to live music and prices, it's really expensive. And I don't think as an artist myself, I'm like, people need to be paid. And
Yeah.
these tours and stuff cost money. They employ tons and tons of people. I get it. But I also feel like for a night out, thousands of dollars, I just can't. I'm not that person. I probably will never go to another major arena show because I'm not going to pay $100 to sit in the very back row on a bleacher. To
Yeah.
me, that's not enjoyable. That's not what it's about. I remember my first concert was free general admission. And
Sure.
I don't expect people to work for free. Somebody was paying for that, obviously. But I don't expect people to work for free. I value what they're doing and what they're putting out. But I also feel somewhere the overall experience and the price of this stuff is astronomical. And I'm just like,
There, yeah, there was a lot of in 2022 when he first announced the tour and tickets went on sale for last year. There was a lot of upset about how expensive tickets were. And Bruce did himself no favor. And I have said this multiple times that as much money as he makes, he can afford a better PR person. He just talked about, yeah, we used to charge, and I'm overly simplifying it, but we used to keep prices lower. I asked, what's the going rate? And I said, okay, let's charge that this time because we've got a big band and we put on a good show, right? And but the way he said it was not very good, right? And Ticketmaster, everyone hates because they have the surge pricing, which is they have dynamic pricing. So if a lot of people want a show, they shoot tickets up to expensive. So it did not come across very well. I'm lucky is that I'm okay paying $200. That's probably the max I'll pay for an upper bleacher seat because I'm in the building and I get to see it and I'm in my church. But I respect people that go, no, if I'm going to pay that much money, and it is true, I'll throw this there. You can go see a local band,
yeah.
probably still for 30, $40 that maybe they aren't going to be as good as Bruce, but they are going to give you great entertainment. It's the same thing as going to see Chris Rock or
Mhm.
an up and coming comedian. I remember years ago, I had never heard of George Lopez, and he was doing one of the local comedy club here in Dallas. I can't remember which one it was now. And it was a Sunday night and my company had bought the house out. That was our event. We had a
Yeah.
kickoff meeting. You talk about it. That's where I had gotten a compliment that I was good. And so we got to hear that was the first I'd ever seen George Lopez. And I was like, this guy's amazing. And then when
Mhm.
you later see his success, you go, yeah, I could tell he was that good. I think there is that beauty of if you want to still see good entertainment, if you search for it, you can find it. But with the pandemic and with everything going, if only there was a place where you could get virtual comedy. Let's
Right.
talk about that some.
Yeah, what a great segue, right? Because I do believe that performers should be paid, and I do want to make it accessible to everybody. So with Plauzzable, one of I was trying to solve a couple of problems. It originally started as like, how can we connect in a way in between in-person shows to work out new material and get real-time feedback without waiting for somebody or having a one-way thing. So I created it for that. But in doing so and learning, wow, this was benefiting other people besides myself, what other problems could I solve? And one of them is comedians typically don't get paid until they're at a feature or headliner level. And even then, they're not getting paid what they maybe should be getting paid or at all. I was like, how can we change the business model so it gives the performers more control over their own schedule, the shows, they can produce their own shows, they can put them in the driver's seat and they earn the majority of the ticket revenue. So how do I do that? And that's where I came up with Plauzzable. And this is a way where everybody can log in, fans or comedians create a free account, and comedians get the scheduling tools, the virtual stage, and the ticketing services to use as they see fit. And they can create their own shows, their podcasts, their classes, whatever it is. They can do them for free or they can set their own ticket price. Comedy fans can come in, they set their free account, they can follow and discover new comedians in the directory, and then they can look at the show schedule and see what kind of comedy appeals to them and what would they like to see and what fits in their pocketbook, whether it's free or otherwise is their choice. Yeah, that's what we ended up launching, and I'm really excited about it because people can have a very personal and interactive form of entertainment. Watching something on your couch and passively watching it is one thing, and I think there's a place for that. But I think other people with families, they put their kids to bed. Hey, let's have a date night. We don't have to get a sitter. We don't have to pay for parking. We don't have to get 2 drink minimums, but we can enjoy live comedy from the comfort of our own home. And we can pick our comedians and who we want to see based on our own preferences.
So when did you start this?
The idea was rolling around for a really long time. And then I actually used existing technologies to test it out before COVID, August of 2019 BC, as I call it, before COVID.
Yeah.
And COVID happened, and a lot of people started using the existing technologies such as Zoom and Google Meets and Teams and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And those were great, but they present other problems for performers. And I'm like, how do I fix that? And so that's when during that time in COVID, I went back to school and got my master's in innovation and entrepreneurship and learned how I could scale this big idea and solve these problems because I'm a non-technical founder. How do I build my team? And
Yeah.
so I built a team and put that together, and we developed our own software, and that's designed specifically for online entertainment. And then we launched a year ago, December, and have just been busy growing ever since.
So how do you talked about the mechanisms, but is this a wide range of different styles of comedians and there is a little bit of everything for each person?
Yeah. So what comedians do when they come in, so we have hundreds of comedians on there, literally hundreds. And so they create their profile and they select what kind of comedy they do. So they would pick their type, like clean comedy, corporate friendly, moderate, club, or what we call blue, which is very dirty or your more
Yeah.
shocking material. And they click on what they do. Some people do more than one. So they click those. And then they select what topics they typically talk about because fans come in and they tell us what they prefer and what they don't prefer. So they can say, I like to hear relationship jokes and observational humor and storytelling. And then I don't want to hear about politics or religion.
Yeah.
And that kind of sets that up. So as we continue building out, we can make better recommendations for them, but they can go through the directory and they can sort by those topics and see who does that kind of humor, who does that kind of stuff. So as we continue to grow, there'll be more and more shows to choose from, and they'll have more and more selections.
What has surprised you so much the most about this project?
How long it would take me? That's
I bet. Yes.
yeah, how much money it costs. There's honestly, it's a journey. I think there's a lot that surprised me, and then there's things that oddly didn't surprise me. And yeah, it's interesting. I think in my mind things move along quicker, and then
Right.
how did 3 months go by? And but I
Yeah.
work on this every day. This is my full-time focus, and yeah, it's just. I think for me, it's just wow. I've been working on this a few years now. I better get up and
Yeah.
comb my hair and make some changes. Yeah.
What is there a couple of moments where you go, yeah, this is what I was looking for, where you have this sense of accomplishment?
Yeah, there have been a few. Right when we launched, I there was like this moment of a day where I sat here and my husband and I would come back to the computer and be like, "Oh, more people signed up.
Yeah.
People are signing up." But my heart is full. Like I don't have any kids. This is the baby that I'm bringing into the world, and it matters to me. I want people to like it. I want people to use it, and I want people to succeed on it. So there's that. I think a couple of the other moments of seeing other people putting up their shows and having people show up and laugh and say, "Hey, I had a good experience on here." It's not just like a one-off, it's each time that happens, that's validating people who come back, people who are logging in every single day, people who are showing up and working out their material at mics. I'm like, "Okay, this is so reaffirming. This is exciting to me. I wanna make a difference. I want to bring in people outside of my own network and see how it's been a beautiful thing to see how it spread, and we have people in a variety of countries logging in to do comedy.
You mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation that you were a comedian, entrepreneur, and think, are you, do you also, you or others provide coaching and help with people if they ask for it in this so that they can. One of the things I like about my network that I'm part of, Pantheon Networks, thank you guys for having me, is there's other podcast hosts and we help each other. We're like, oh, if you're struggling with this is what I've done to do, or let me help. Do you guys offer some of that as well?
Yeah, so I'm very active on the platform. I try to attend a lot of the shows and events and everything and show my support for people who are trying it out and doing really cool things. I always make myself available. People reach out via email or we have a private Facebook group for the comedians who are producing. And then also we host help sessions specifically for that. We had them several times a week, but now we have them on Monday evenings and Saturday afternoons. And any plausible member, whether they're a fan or a comedian, can hop on to those help sessions. And basically, it's an ask me anything. What do you need help with? How can we support you? How can we help you succeed on here? And we have new comedians, we have more experienced comedian, we have really long timers who've been around the block, but we really want to help them with the tech portion of it. But oftentimes people come in and are like, how do I just get things going? And I'm happy to talk about that too. And there's other people within the community who do that at our open mics and everything. It's a very supportive group of people.
That's nice. That's really nice. So, what's next for the platform? And then what's next for you creatively?
Oh, creatively, I was like, oh, besides retire.
Yes.
And I laugh when I say that because I don't know that would ever happen. I think for the platform, just continue to grow. We're looking at some people are going to be doing some classes, and I'm really excited about that. Having workshops available for people to really continue their education in comedy or even just begin it. I love that. I love that. And I love seeing the different types of shows people are putting up. We have some comedians out of Canada doing a late night show. Canada doesn't have any late night show on TV, and so they're creating their own on Plauzzable. I think that's really cool. Other people have tried their podcast on there for comedy, and yeah, there's fundraisers. We've done fundraisers. So there's a lot of things that people are starting to go, "Oh, I can do that?" I'm like, "You sure can." So that excites me. What's next for me? I honestly, I don't see me doing anything else but focusing on Plauzzable and growing this, and I'm all in. This has become my purpose, and I really want to see it succeed. So honestly, that's where I'm at.
This is your calling.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good. Kind of everything that you've done has led up to helping to create this platform to spread joy and to help people find their own voice.
It honestly has, and it's funny because a few years ago before I had started this, looking at my resume going, what am I doing with my life? Like, how did I get here? These are all see so scattered and like these weird jobs. And here, when I started, I had started in accounts payable for a company, and then a year later went and I stayed at a Fortune 500 for almost 13 years. Everything changed once I got laid off, and that's when I moved to New York. But while I was in New York, I had other day jobs. I was fortunate enough, I took a job as an office manager in an improv theater. I did bookkeeping for them a couple years later. I did all these different roles and learned so many different skill sets that I was like, how do these connect? But as an entrepreneur, I'm wearing all the hats. So everything from good experiences, the best experiences, to even my worst experiences have prepared me for this. And for that, I am so grateful for all of those lessons because I can apply them here and continue learning and getting new lessons thrown at me all the time. But yeah, having to wear all the hats and figure things out, I'm a problem solver day in, day out. And so that's very helpful.
That's very cool, Leanne. All right,
Yeah.
what should I've asked you that I haven't?
Oh, you didn't ask me for a joke, which is totally fine.
I felt like, so I'm gonna get this wrong, but I remember I was reading a book by Douglas Adams, and the character mentions that he's a private detective. And the woman he's talking to said, I had a neighbor that played the bassoon. And he's okay. And everyone would always ask, where do
Mhm.
you practice it? So I'm trying to think of what the question that everyone would ask a private detective that I don't want to ask the same question. So my thought was they're always going to ask Leanne for a joke. So I think one of the things I always tell people is try to talk to people about not only what they want to talk about, but something they don't normally get to talk about, which Billy Idol, right? You talk about Plauzzable all the time, and you did a great job on it, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk about something else. So, yeah,
Yeah. And
but
I love
go ahead.
it. I will say, I'm glad you didn't ask me for a joke because comedians are always like, oh my gosh, if one more person asked me to tell a joke. And we don't ever really always want to do that. So I laugh as I said that to you because people typically will ask it. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, and then I'm going to do your joke. And you'll be like, that wasn't even funny.
yeah.
Um, but the thing that you could ask that would be totally different is what would I be doing if I weren't doing comedy or plausible?
All right. So I'd love to hear that story.
It's very short. It would be little as possible. No,
Yes.
it would honestly, it's like there are the days where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, really?
Yeah.
Why don't I just go work for somebody and then come home and have my weekends and evenings free? I think I would take up a hobby. I'm one of those people, I think that if I got involved in some sort of hobby, I would like be all in on it in some way. Like I learned how to play ukulele for a show. I loved learning to do that. I was like, oh, if I weren't doing plausible, there's a ukulele group here in Seattle that meets every week. And I always think about it on Fridays. I'm like, oh, they're probably meeting, but look, me, I'm working. So I'd probably do something like that. Maybe join a dart league. I don't
So
know.
I have in the back of my mind, the idea of buying a ukulele and trying to learn how to play it because I in in theory it should be easier than a guitar, right? And at 65, I just don't know if I want to try to learn how to play a guitar. So that's one of my things in the back of my mind. I have a ukulele on my Amazon wish list and I'm like thinking about it. But then I go, I really want to spend the time doing this, or would I just rather record another podcast? So yes, there you go. I did have a guy on once who actually did a whole show of nothing but Bruce songs on his ukulele, and it was very fun. Yeah, it was a really cool atmosphere. He did it was while Bruce was on Broadway that first time, and he did this. He You could go to the shore and hear him do a set of Bruce songs all on the ukuleles, which is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I won't ask you for the joke, though I will. No, I won't tell you that story. That's what I will want is I'm gonna get ready to tell everyone where to go. But before I ask you how to contact you, how I can be part of this, I have to ask you the Mary question. I end every podcast with the Mary question. So for those of you who are checking out because you're fans of Leanne's, thank you for listening. She made you very proud. Jay Armstrong was an honors English teacher. He's now retired. But when he was teaching, he would give his students the lyrics to Bruce Springsteen's song Thunder Road. They would read it, they would treat it as if it was a poem. He would talk about the imagery Bruce uses, the themes he explores, and then he would ask his class at the end of the day, does Mary get in the car? So, Leanne, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer it. I'm gonna say yes. I believe that Mary does.
Okay.
Uh, and I love this question because I went back and I listened to the song again, right? And I was like, wait, is there a video? Did she get back in the car? And I'm like, wait, there is no video on this. But in my mind, oddly enough, the imagery, I was like, there has to be a video because this is perfect, like vivid imagery for his song. And in my mind, Mary would get in the car. I feel like he told the story. I don't know if you want to hear my reasoning, but
Oh, I
yeah,
do. Yes. Yeah.
so it got me really thinking, and I was like, I really want to think this through. But at the beginning, he talks about her coming out onto the porch, and then it's like this wooing her into the car. But the thing that got me is the fact you're not all that anymore. You're just all right. Indicating they've had they've known each other for a very long time. Get in the car. And and then he also talked about she's been in the car before, as I got from it. And I'm like, of course she's going to probably get back in the car again because she didn't stomp out onto the front porch. She came out and her dress was swaying. Her dress sways,
Yeah.
which is
So
not
that,
safe. Yeah, it's not safe.
that's the controversy, right? It sways or waves. Yeah. Yes.
And I was like, what is it? And it's interesting because actually sings sways, but they printed in something
Yeah.
wave, but his autobiography
Yeah.
or biography, it's sways.
Yeah.
So I was like, kids are like, a dress doesn't wave.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Yes.
so I got caught up into that. But it brought loving feelings. There was nothing about it that lent to they were not in love or that they did not like each other or that there was distrust there. And I was like, of course you're gonna come. Look how beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know, just very endearing. And there was this element of they knew each other so well. So that's how I thought get her back into the car. But then I'm like, wait, there has to be more to this
Okay.
because there must be a significant character, right? Yes, Mary appears in another song
Yes.
where they were teenagers.
Right.
So this is like the later chapters of their life, and that was the beginning chapters. I'm like, well, yeah, Mary, get in the car. I'm like, there we go. Yeah.
So, yes, I love that answer. So, very good. I love that answer. Good job.
Hey,
All right.
there was,
So, go ahead.
can I add one other thing? Because
Yeah.
I actually
Anything.
love that we're talking about Bruce Springsteen, and I was actually really excited about like listening to this stuff again. So the other thought that I had about her was that they had dated when they were young and they went their own separate ways, right?
Yeah.
And she used to be quite the good looking thing, but maybe he went off and did his things on the road and came back and she didn't have life so good. So
Yeah.
she a rough life, a rough go of it. And hey, get back in the car. Maybe I shouldn't have left you here, kind of thing.
I
Which
like
kind of
that.
be sad, but to the deep okay, so they did know each other. So if I took it to that next level of like how the other part that led me there was the fact that she took her ex-lovers as crosses
Yeah.
and there seemed to be a lot of them. And I was like, wow, this woman had a rough go of it for a while, maybe. And maybe that's how they spoke to each other. Maybe that's how they ended it is, hey, you ain't all that, but you ain't all that either.
Yeah.
But it may not have been true.
Yeah.
but that they spoke to each other. And then as he came back, you've had a rough go of it, or maybe she's lost some serious loves. Maybe it wasn't like her out and about on town, but lost some serious loves. And they ain't getting any younger. They're older. They're both like that.
Yeah. Because he said in the line, we're not that young anymore, but have a little faith. There is magic in the night. I love that answer. I appreciate that so much. All right. So, Leanne, if someone wants to reach you, they want to hear more about Plauzzable, tell us how.
Okay, so plauzzable.com, Plauzzable. Yeah, plauzzable.com is the easiest thing because there's a contact form if you need to contact me. LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn at Plauzzable or Leanne Linksy. I'm the only Leanne Linksy in the world, as far as I know. So yeah, those are the best ways to contact me, but feel free to take Plauzzable for a spin. Check it out. See what you like.
That sounds great. All right. I will include a link in the show notes. Leanne, this was so much fun. I just
Thank
appreciate you so much. Any final thoughts?
I'm gonna be listening to some Bruce this weekend. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, why am I not listening? I gotta put this up. I gotta put a playlist together. I gotta dig up some of my favorites and things. Yeah. So I really enjoyed this very much and I was looking forward to it because I'm like, wow, I'm actually gonna tell Google to play something else. And it's gonna go, what?
I love that. And I'm so glad. And you're welcome anytime. I would love to have you back just anytime you need to promote something or you just want to visit. If you spend some time with Bruce and say, hey, Jesse, I've got thoughts now, just let me know. But we're
Okay.
going to end with I have the time, so I will sing. Yeah. I'm just a boy, but I will win. Yeah. Lost song of lovers, fellow travelers, leave me sad and hollow out of words. If I could happen to you, so think of yourself. If I should stumble, catch my fall. If I should stumble, catch my fall. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon.